record. Thank you for being back this week for another installment of the Farmers Market Vendor Bootcamp webinar series. I am Liz Mooneyham. I'm an extension specialist in the Center for Profitable Agriculture. And we have with us today Eryn Bell, who is an extension specialist at the Center for Farm Management. She's going to talk to us in a second a little bit about record keeping. Just as some housekeeping things, the session's being recorded and posted to YouTube after. That way, if you don't get to stick around for the whole session, or you have some follow-ups that you want to go back and rewatch, they'll be posted to the center's YouTube channel, and I will send out an email when those are posted. If you have any questions for Eryn or for me as we go along, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and Eryn will get to them as she can. Yeah, I think that's all my housekeeping. Thank you again, Eryn, for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so I'll get my screen shared. All right, Liz, can you see that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey guys, like she said, my name is Eryn Bell. I'm with the UT Center of Farm Management. I've been with Extensions for about 9 years now, started in Gainesboro, Tennessee, and then got to move closer to home. We've got our farm in Bethpage, Tennessee, if anyone's out this way. So real quick, a few things. As we go through this, please feel free to throw questions in the chat box or raise your hand, anything like that. Don't feel like you've got to hold questions till the end of the class. I kind of like answering them as you guys think of them, because a lot of times you guys, if one of you has a question, I'm sure several others are thinking the same thing. So please feel free to do that. All right, so record keeping is one of those topics, and I'm kind of preaching to the choir, I guess, speaking to myself. It is difficult when you are a busy farmer, producer, you're growing your crops, you're raising your livestock, you're traveling to different markets. Record keeping can be very difficult to keep up with. It's one of those things, even though it's my job to do it, it is very difficult for me to sit down and really make sure I keep up with it. So, from my own personal experience and then working with a lot of farms, I came up with this presentation just to help not only encourage you guys to keep records, but also show you why it's so important and how at the end of the day, it should reduce your stress quite a bit. And I'm all about that. Anything we can do to reduce stress levels, I'm here for. So real quick, before we get started, and you can just kind of, if you want to just hit the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen, I'm just curious, how many of you all feel very confident in your record keeping system? Like you feel like you have the time to do it, you're able to keep up with it. And you can also just put in the chat box, like yes or no, whatever's easiest for you. Okay, so we got a few hand raises. That's pretty good. Sometimes I get crickets on this question. So that's awesome. It's like I said, it's one of those things we all strive to do it. We all have that goal when the new year rolls around, but it can be difficult to do so. All right. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and move forward. So what is record keeping? Now, I kind of came up with this definition because I really didn't find any that I liked specifically for farming, because record keeping for us entails a lot of things. So I just say that it's the act of logging important characteristics of your farm that are measurable and help you make sound management decisions to improve the health of your farm. So realistically, you're looking at it as what characteristics on my farm are important, because all of ours are going to be completely different from each other for the most part. No two farms are the same. Those characteristics, you have to be able to measure them in some way, keep up with them somehow. And then you're able to look at that data that you captured, whether it be financial or production, and from there make decisions that hopefully help you improve your farm operation as a whole. Sometimes when I bring up record keeping, people just get so focused on financial record keeping, which is very important. But a lot of times you don't realize that it involves a lot with your operation, whether it be labor hours, whether it be production data, financial data. It entails a lot of different things, and we'll kind of explore those today. All right, so we're going to focus on two types of record keeping today, financial and production. So to start out with, financial records, these are items related to any type of financial transaction on your farm. So, any of the expenses that you have to purchase supplies for your operation, any different income sources that you have. If you have loans out, those different interest rates and payments you might have, taxes that you have to pay on your operation, creating budgets for your farm, financial statements, those things that you have to turn into maybe a bank if you're looking for a loan, or if you're applying for a grant, any type of insurance coverage you have on your operation. Insurance is a huge thing, especially when it comes to finances. So making sure that you've got good insurance coverage. So let's say if wind does come through and knock over your high tunnel, you've got something to replace it with, and you're not just in the hole for that. So insurance, what type of business entity you operate under. Are you a sole proprietorship? Are you a partnership? Are you an LLC? Looking at those different things, because that will affect how revenue is processed. And then transition planning. So if you have that next generation you want to pass it on to, how are you going to do so? So those are all financial records that we want to keep up with. Now, not all of these are day-to-day records you're going to be keeping up with. Obviously, like the transition planning, business entity selection, those aren't things that you're looking at every day. But as far as your expenses and your incomes, those are going to be more weekly records that you're keeping up with. Oh, let's see. Hold on. I hit a button. Here we go. So what are the benefits of financial record keeping? So one of the biggest things is going to help you monitor expenses and income. So I like to keep up with these things fairly closely because I like to look for what I call red flags. If you have certain expenses that all of a sudden, instead of it costing you maybe a couple $100 a month, all of a sudden it's like $1,000 a month, that's a red flag, and that's something you need to look at. So if you're monitoring those expenses on a weekly or maybe even monthly basis, it gives you the opportunity to recognize those types of changes. Of course, we all know that fuel prices have gone up, fertilizer prices have gone up, you've got inflation. So yes, everything is increasing, but do we really look at it and see, okay, how much is this increasing, and do I need to make changes within my operation to account for those changes? Something else, keeping up with your revenue streams. So I'm sure several of you sell at more than just one farmer's market. So keeping up with which farmers markets are you selling better? Are you having more income come in with certain markets? Do certain markets sell your products better than other markets? So keeping up with which farmers markets are serving you the best. Sometimes we can kind of get caught up in the chase and go to a bunch of different farmers markets, which is great, but it's a lot of work. And then you realize, well, shoot, I only made $100 at this one, but I made 2,000 at this one. So making sure that you're keeping up with that so that you can hopefully invest your time in the one that's making you the most money. Another thing with financial records, and this is a big one, it's a lot of what I do as a job, but if you keep up with good financial records, you should be able to figure out your cost of production and hopefully determine a break-even price. And I think Liz said that you guys actually have or have already had a session on price setting for your product, so that is awesome. In order to do that, you of course have to have a break-even price so that you know how much you have in that commodity. So once you have figured out your true cost of production, from there you can then add your profit and get accurate prices. Something else keeping up financial records with, it'll help you file accurate taxes. This is also a big one. I'm big on taxes, especially farm taxes. So making sure that you have the appropriate records and you're filing things away correctly, because typically that will actually help you save money in the long run. So making sure you've got those squared away. Creating representative financial statements. So if you are trying to apply for a loan or a grant, anything like that, more than likely they're going to ask you for a balance sheet or maybe a cash flow statement. If you don't have financial records, you obviously do not have the data to create those statements. So making sure you have that. Creating a representative budget of your farm operation is a big thing as well, especially if you're trying to forecast. Maybe you want to expand one part of your farm operation, and you can use old data or old budgets to forecast that next year to see if it would actually be feasible. So making sure you have that. And then, of course, evaluating your business as a whole, making sure that you are staying healthy and on track. So just to kind of show you when it comes to financial records, these are kind of the steps we utilize as a team in order to help producers not only record keep, create a budget, and set prices, but make sure that they have the appropriate records to do these things. So think about it as record keeping when it comes to finances is just step number one. You're gathering all that data in order to create a budget for your farm operation. And then from that budget, you can then figure out your break-even price and then set appropriate prices to hit those profit margins that you want. So it's all about being sustainable as a farm operation. In order to do that, you've got to record keep to be able to get to those correct prices. Okay, so on the flip side of it, we've only talked about financial. Another huge piece is production records. Now, as a job, I do focus on financial records, but I have very quickly realized that these are both equally important. You can have, great financial records all day long, but if you're not producing your product well, and if you don't know what's going on with your plants or your livestock, your finances are going to reflect that. So I always include both of these. So production records have to do with items related to the use of inputs and the production of your outputs. So think levels of production, things like inventory, maybe your crop yield, labor hours could be something else, the different varieties that you choose, the different genetics that you choose if you're in livestock, seeding and fertilizing rates, planting and harvesting dates, keeping up with, if you're a vegetable producer, how much loss or shrinkage do you have? And then, of course, any type of herd data. So when I say herd data, whether you're involved with small ruminants or cattle, making sure that you're keeping up with birthing rates, with breed back times, keeping up with average daily gains, all of those different things. So just remember that production records have to do with you actually producing your product in a healthy and efficient way. So what are the benefits of keeping up with these things? Well, one of the most important, it's going to help you make educated decisions on breed and variety selection. If you've got 5 different types of tomatoes that you're growing and you figure out, hey, 2 of these really just aren't cutting it, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of those and stick with these other 3 varieties. Same thing with breed selection. If you figure out, this breed of, I'll just use sheep as an example because we know we want parasite resistant ones here in Tennessee. But let's say you choose a breed that does not do well here, switching it can make all the difference. So really paying attention to that. So improve quality of your herd through culling, time management practices. That's a big thing, especially if you're into vegetable production, making sure that you're aware and watching for those different pests and diseases that can come through your crop. Something else that production records will do, it'll hopefully help you reduce waste. For example, if you know that, let's just go with zucchini. If you know that zucchini doesn't sell well during certain seasons or does sell well during other certain seasons, you can adjust your planting schedule based on that. Another thing is going to help you forecast accurate production measures and inventory. So again, if you know that customers come to you and they have certain things that they want, you can make sure to plant enough to have enough for all of those customers so that you do not run out or that you don't overplant either. So with production records, again, just like with financial records, it's going to help you create accurate budgets because, again, if you don't know how much you're going to produce, you can't very well create an accurate budget. And then hopefully it'll help you make financially beneficial decisions. So think of it as production records, as well as your production does, that is going to feed your financial records. And then, of course, if you're keeping up with your expenses and what's having to go back into production, that is therefore also going to help your finances and production in return. So anytime I'm talking about record keeping, I'm never talking about just one or the other. You truly do have to have both because they are both very, very important and they both support one another. All right, so where do we start with record keeping? A lot of times when I'm meeting with someone or talking with someone about record keeping, it's not that they don't want to record keep, it's just very daunting thinking of where even to start. Because, you know, with financial records, we kind of have a set list of things that we're going to follow when we're keeping up with that. However, with production records, we can get as complex or as simple as we want to. So really trying to figure out where do I need to start out is one of the biggest things. So the first thing you're going to ask yourself are, what are your goals? So this first question I have up here, you know, are you wanting your farm operation to be a true income source? That's kind of a big one. We're working with a lot more, I guess I'll call them hobby homestead operators, or those who, you know, aren't necessarily wanting to replace an income. They're just wanting to, you know, sell something extra and have a little bit of fun with it. And that's wonderful. But then there's another group of people that I work with where they're actually wanting to replace their income so they can come home and work the farm full time. That is two very, very different goals. And that's going to have your focus in very different places. So making sure that you understand, you know, what am I actually trying to do here? Am I starting to truly run a farm business, or is this just more of a hobby, something more fun that I want to do? Think about what your long-term and short-term goals are. So are you hoping to expand to new enterprises? Let's say right now you're doing market garden vegetables, cut flowers, but maybe you want to introduce beekeeping in the future. You need to make sure to kind of map that out. Are you wanting to maybe not add an enterprise, but expand on your current ones that you have? Again, maybe you're a market style vegetable operator and you decide, you know what, I need to add a high tunnel or I need to add an actual greenhouse. Paying attention to those things that you need and having those goals in mind. A few other basic goals, maybe for the short term. Are you wanting to decrease waste? Are you wanting to become more efficient with your time? Again, think about the mileage that you spend going to these farmers markets, the time that you spend there, making sure that you're putting that time in the right places. Are you maybe wanting to increase your output? Again, your customers have certain things they like to buy. You need to increase that and probably fairly quickly. So getting that planning schedule in place. Are you maybe hoping to reduce expenses? Again, right now we all know that fuel is high. How can we mitigate or absorb that cost? Are you hoping to maybe increase profit margin? So maybe you're needing to look at decreasing your inputs, or maybe you're just trying to figure out what your break even is. So again, ask yourself these questions because that will help you figure out what records do you need to keep up with to answer these questions. So figuring out your goals is definitely number one. The next thing I want to make sure to do, and actually this might even be the first thing you need to do, make sure your finances are separate. So what I mean by that is make sure that you have a separate checking account for your farm business. So don't have it mixed in or mingled with your personal. There are a lot of reasons why you want to do this. One of the biggest ones for me, at least, is it is very, very hard to go through and organize financial records when it's all tied up with your personal. You have a lot more personal transactions than you do your farm transactions. So if you have them in a separate checking account, it makes it super easy to go through and know what each purchase was for. Another thing is the IRS really doesn't like to see them mixed in together. So if you do ever get audited, and hopefully you don't, but if you do, they will look at that because they do want to see that they're separate. They don't want business mixed in with personal. So again, main thing, I mean, of course, we want to keep the IRS happy, but the biggest thing is it's going to make record keeping much easier for you if you have it completely separate. And it's not like it's got to be at a different bank. Just open a separate checking account and get maybe a debit card and a checkbook tied to it. All right, so then you're going to figure out what records do I actually need. So this plays big into what type of farm operation you have. Of course, financial records kind of stay the same, but production will be very, very different for all of us. So think about what financial records, maybe out of the norm, do you need? So do you sell at multiple locations? I would definitely suggest if you're selling at several different farmers markets that you keep up with each one separately to see how you're doing. Do you have multiple farm businesses? So what I mean by that is, do you have multiple enterprises? Again, are you maybe selling cut flowers and you're also selling vegetables? You will want to keep up with those separately. The goal here is to watch out for, you don't want one enterprise or one of your farm businesses draining the other without you knowing it. So keeping those enterprises separately so that you can keep up with their revenue streams separately is very important. Something else to think about with financial records is, are you going to hire labor and what can you afford? When it comes to, I'm trying to think of, there are several larger market garden style operators that I work with, and they do hire between 5 to 10 people throughout the summer. Winter, they're not worried about it, but they do have to hire throughout the summer, and that plays into what they need to charge for their product. So think about that. What type of taxes will your farm business have to pay? So this depends on what you're selling. If you're getting into value-added products, you may have to deal with sales tax. If you're selling raw ag commodities, then you don't have to worry about sales tax. So just making sure that you're keeping up with those things. So what type of production records do you need? This kind of goes into, are you selling, livestock or meat, or are you selling crops? What characteristics are important for either of these things that you need to keep up with? Do you have certain varieties or genetics that do better under certain conditions? So variety selection, again, it's huge for vegetable producers. It's also huge for fruit producers. I always hate when I see, I'll go out to a farm and they've just planted an orchard, and I'll get there and I'll kind of look at the varieties and I'm like, oh no, these varieties are not good. I mean, I'll keep it in my head. I don't say that to them in that moment, but making sure that you're keeping up with what varieties do well here, especially if you're in fruit production, because you don't want to have to be spraying every other day for 2 apples. So making sure that you're keeping up with that. So again, just looking at your farm as a whole, figuring out what characteristics are important. So the next thing you'll need to do is choose a financial record keeping system. So I'm going to have financial systems and production systems separate just because normally you don't have them combined. I wish there was a software where you could combine them, and I'm sure there are some apps that can. But for today, we're just going to focus on the main financial ones. So Quicken is honestly probably my favorite. Mostly we do use it on our farm out here. And real quick, raise your hand if you utilize Quicken now. It's a fairly common one. So I want to see if any of you guys utilize Quicken. And again, you can just put it in the chat box or just raise your hand. Okay. So I bet a lot of you guys use this other system then. All right, so we'll dive into Quicken. Again, we utilize it for our farm personally, and I really enjoy it. So what I like about Quicken is it's very simple. It's designed for personal finances, and it's almost formatted like a checkbook register. Like when you open your Quicken account, it just looks like a running checkbook. You can connect it to your bank account, which is what we've done. So all of my transactions go automatically into Quicken, and then all I have to do is go through those transactions. I can choose what category I need it to go into. Quicken has a bunch of categories already in there, but you can add your own. But some good category examples would be, gas and fuel, maybe input supplies like, oh gosh, like seeding trays, water spigots, anything like that. Other expense ones could be, labor costs, chemicals, any fertilizers that you use. So all of those categories are already in there, and then you can add your own, which I like. Something else that Quicken can do, which is really great, is you can separate your enterprises. So again, you've got all these transactions. You're going to choose the category, and then you can also choose the enterprise. So let's say you're I'll just keep using this example, cut flower operator, market garden vegetable. You can have those two enterprises separated so you know what incomes and expenses came from which enterprise, which is really great. If you have a receipt that has multiple different types of expenses on it, let's say you do a big order from the co-op, you can split that receipt up into those different categories and enterprises, which is great. So again, very, very easy to utilize, very simple. It can run summaries like your balance sheet, cash flow, income statement. All of those are automatic reports. It can also run a Schedule F report. So every year, I typically just run a Schedule F report and I'll take it to my tax preparer, and it's very easy that way. Something else I like about Quicken is it's very economical. I think we spend, I think it's $7 a month. It's very, very cheap, not too expensive, which is really great. And I think I've got an example. Okay, here we go. So yes, so here is a Schedule F report that was run. This is just an example farm, so don't worry about the numbers. But you can see here it separates it out into the categories that then transfer directly onto a Schedule F. So sale of livestock or product that you raised, any ag program payments you came in, chemicals, custom hire expenses, all of those different things will be separated out. And hopefully most of you guys have a good tax preparer that you use, and you can just turn this into them. So again, I highly recommend Quicken for financial records. Probably the most popular one is QuickBooks. So let me know, raise your hand or put it. Okay, it looks like chat's disabled. That's okay. Raise your hand if you guys use QuickBooks, because actually I think this one's probably a lot more popular. Okay, yep. All right, good deal. Well, good. I'm glad to see that a lot of you guys already have a system that you're using. QuickBooks is amazing, especially if you're at farmers market and if you're using different payment methods, you can connect all of those things to QuickBooks. I like to say QuickBooks is the big brother or more sophisticated version of Quicken. So QuickBooks is more like a true accounting program. It has a lot more gadgets and abilities than Quicken does. So you kind of need to choose which one based off of what you need. So some add-on features that QuickBooks has that Quicken does not is payroll, 401k tracking. If you hire 1099 employees, it can also do that for you, whereas Quicken cannot do those things. It can also do invoice creation and sending, which is super nice. Just like with Quicken, you can track income and expenses. It does all of the reports that Quicken does. Tax form sorting. Something else it can do is sales tax calculation. So if you are one of those producers that has an item you have to add sales tax to, QuickBooks has that feature. So as far as pricing with QuickBooks, it's kind of all over the map. It just depends on how sophisticated you need it to be. But I highly recommend QuickBooks. It's very user-friendly. It does take a little bit more learning than Quicken just because it has a lot more features, but it really does a great job, and it can connect to Square and all of those different payment methods, which is very, very helpful, especially if you're busy at a farmer's market. So Excel is another thing you can utilize to keep up with financial records. The thing with Excel is, and I'm a big Excel person, I use it for everything, but just keep in mind if this is the route you end up taking, you yourself have to know how to, how do I phrase this? How to design Excel or how to tell Excel what you want it to do. It's not going to run automatic reports like Quicken and QuickBooks. With Excel, you'll have to put in equations and ask it to give you certain things. So just keep in mind it's a lot more difficult on you or creates more work for you, but it's a great system if you're good at it. and if you've been using it for a long time. So Excel, you can make graphs and charts. You can create financial and production reports through Excel. It just takes a little bit more time. Most people use Excel, so it's easy to share with other people. And I'd say one of the biggest benefits if you decide to use Excel is that you can hold both your production and your financial record in one file. So I do have a couple of producers who just really are not comfortable using an accounting software system. So I've got them set up with Excel, and we keep all of their production data in different tabs and then their financial data in different tabs, but it's all right there, which is kind of nice. Just keep in mind that you'll have to know how to input the data to get it to tell you what you need. So here's an example of a very basic Excel workbook template that I share with producers all the time. So in this example, all they have to do is they'll have a tab for every month. They just have to copy and paste over from their bank statement all their transactions. And then from there, I created this little drop-down box. They can choose what line item it needs to go into. So again, kind of what category. And I just use Schedule F here, the tax form, in order to create these categories. And then this operator had a few different farm enterprises, so they had to select which farm enterprise the transaction went into as well. So again, Excel is very useful. It's very flexible, which is nice, but you do have to know how to program it. Okay, so record keeping books. So that's kind of the fancy way of saying pen and paper. I have been to several farms that have absolutely phenomenal pen and paper records. And then I've been to other farms who have something like QuickBooks and there's nothing in there, or there's a bunch of transactions with no organization. So I just like to say, make sure to utilize whatever system you are actually going to keep up with. So if you are a pen and paper person, and that's what you're going to use, then I would stick with pen and paper. I definitely do not push to move into a system that I feel like you may not use, because it's not useful. So again, I have nothing against pen and paper. Just make sure you're keeping up with everything, keep your receipts. And of course, you won't be able to run automatic reports or anything like that, but you'll at least have totals. All right, so once you've got a financial system set up, you then need to choose a production record keeping system. So of course, I kind of already mentioned this. I really love using Excel for production records. You're not having to do as many equations as you do with financial records, so I highly recommend utilizing Excel. There are also a lot of really good record keeping books out there that are already laid out for you. You just have to use them. A lot of times I will see people have the books out in the field, and then they will come and move all that data into an Excel spreadsheet once they're done for the week. And we'll actually look, there's one record keeping book that I utilize all the time, and I'll show it to you guys here in a minute. And then there are various apps out there. I did not put the apps on here because I can't keep up with all the new ones coming out. And to be honest, if I have not used them personally, I do not like to promote them. Do watch out. There are a lot of different apps coming out, and not all of them are this way, but some of them are fairly pricey and they don't actually do what they advertise that they do. So just make sure to really, talk to other producers, make sure the apps are a true software system that you can utilize before purchasing them, because again, they're kind of coming out faster than we can all review them, but there are some really good apps out there. Okay, so let's look at a record keeping book example. This is also a great example for mostly production, but also financial records. So I kind of wanted to walk through this. This can actually be found as a PDF online. And if any of you guys would like this, I can share it with Liz and she can send it to you. It's honestly the best one that I've seen out there. And it can easily be transferred into an Excel file, which is super nice. But this is just record keeping and templates for small scale fruit and vegetable growers. And that's what most of us are probably. And it was done through USDA, so you know that it's been reviewed. So let's look at some examples. So again, we're talking production records. And I know I won't be able to hit on what everyone needs for their different enterprises that you have, but I really like these examples. So this is more if you're into vegetable production or crop production, this booklet is going to be more for you. If you're into livestock, this would not be for you because you guys are looking for totally different things. But the first thing here is when you open up the booklet, it has seed and plant source. So this is where, you know, if you're obviously buying seeds or maybe you're buying plugs, you can put what vegetable it was it a seed or a plant, the date, the price, where did you get it from? So this is very important, and this became very important in strawberries a couple years ago when we were having some pretty big disease issues with strawberries. It helped people track, okay, well, where did I get those strawberries from? Because I need to notify them that their strawberry plants are infected. So again, you're keeping up with this not only for you, but if something goes wrong with a certain tray that you have or seeds that you have, you can track back and figure out, you know, maybe I don't need to buy from them, or wow, this is great, I'm going to keep buying from them. So very important. Then it has a sheet for a greenhouse plan. This could also just be a high tunnel plan. It doesn't have to be a full blown greenhouse, but it shows, you know, of course, what are you growing? When did you plant them? How many flats did you do? How many plants are in each flat? What can be expected for totals and then actual that you ended up with. What this is nice for is, let's say again, you bought these new type of seeds. They don't take like you thought they would. It shows you, well, after all this planning, how many did I actually end up with? And that helps you keep up with a certain percentage as far as survival with those plants. And it'll help you make decisions, hopefully, in the future. This is a big one, planting and harvesting dates. So we all know if we're selling vegetables, we're not planting all of our tomatoes and all of our squash at the beginning of the year. We're doing it on a seasonal basis or a rotating basis where you're making sure that you have supply throughout the growing season. So this is what that could be utilized for. And then it of course has what did you harvest and when and how many pounds. So again, it helps you keep up with, well, how much am I going to have in May versus July? So you can hopefully keep up with demand or adjust your planting based on that. Here's another good one for planting. This is more for field crops. So if you've got corn, and again, I'm not talking commercially growing corn, but if you are doing, you know, a quarter acre of corn or a half acre if you're selling at the farmer's market, this would be how you could keep up with that. Or maybe you're doing beans on a bigger scale, pumpkins, some of those things that take a little bit more space than a raised bed or just, you know, one row. Here's another one for harvesting. So this one is really good just to get some more detail. You've got the crop that you're harvesting, maybe notes from your harvest, things that you notice as far as any type of pest that you may have, or are there a lot of them that you're not able to harvest because they're not good? Maybe bugs got into them or they fell off the plant and they rotted a little bit on the ground. So nice little notes about production that you can keep up with. And then your measuring unit. So are you basing how much you harvested based on that individual tomato, or is it by the pound? Keeping up with that, and then how much you actually harvested. So that all plays into your yield. So this is one of my favorite sheets that it has because it keeps up with your weekly market take. So how much of each different type of crop did you harvest and then take to a certain market? So it's got, you know, your farm, and then it has got like a market ID. So where I live, I would maybe put, depending on where I'm selling, I would say, okay, this is for the Gallatin market, this is for the Hendersonville market. And you can look at those separate farmers markets. You'll have different sheets for them, and it'll show, you'll put how much you took, and then it'll actually help you figure out how much is left. So at the end of the day, you know how many tomatoes you showed up with. You can then say, okay, I brought 50 pounds and I'm going home with 5 pounds. So that means I sold this much. And sometimes that can be kind of tricky in the chaos of some certain farmers markets that get very busy. If you know exactly how much you took, you can even do inventory when you get home. When the day is done and you're just exhausted, you haul everything back home, and then maybe the next day you measure how much is left, and then you can figure out how much you sold. So this will actually help you tie back to your financial records from that day, maybe your Square account, and see how much you made off of these different items. But again, very nice to use, because I know I've got a few people that sell at the Nashville Farmers Market, and certain days it's almost impossible for them to sit down and write as every customer comes through. So they really like doing it this way. Measure in and then measure out. Okay, so this booklet also has some pen and paper financial records. So again, if you're on the road a lot, keeping this maybe in your truck, and you can just write down, you know, I stopped and got fuel. I'll write that in here. Maybe you went and bought some seeds and plants. You can jot that down in here. You can put the months up here. It's just another way to kind of help you keep track. And again, these are all things, if you just write it all in here and then maybe you want to transfer it to Excel later, that's something you can definitely do. So another thing they have is a seasonal list. So this is something that I see people put out for their customers. So when will my produce be ready and available? So you can have all your different crops listed here, and then you can write out, you know, maybe just put a check mark by which month they're going to be available. You can maybe have that at your stand, but it just helps your customer know what you're going to have and when. Mileage log is also a big one. Please make sure you're doing this, especially if you're traveling to farmers markets, because you definitely want to expense this out for taxes. Whether you do mileage or gas receipts, this is a great way to keep up with it. Again, this is just a great booklet to have in your truck or your vehicle, whatever you haul in, and you can write it down as you're traveling so that you don't forget to take advantage of that, especially right now with fuel prices. I don't want y'all to miss out on that. Okay, so someone did ask where they can find these Excel sheets. So I will send these with my presentation to Liz, and then I'll see if she can't send it out to you all, because these are already ready to go. You can literally print these out and have them with you, or save them to your computer. You guys aren't having to create all this. So I just really like using it. So I'll make sure we get it to you. Okay, so once you've got your systems in place, and this is the one that I kind of sigh as I look at it because it's something that I struggle with, but it is the most useful thing. Make sure to create a schedule for yourself. Create a time each week that you sit down and you keep up with your records, whether it's your production or your financial, whatever's been going on that week. Every single week you sit down and review it. And some people say, well, can I just do it like once a month or once a quarter? The only problem with that, if you're like me, I can't look at my transactions from last month at the co-op and remember what they were for. I can maybe remember if I do it on a weekly basis, but if I do it by the month, I just can't remember and I lose all those details. So for us, a lot of times I'll sit down on like a Friday afternoon. And you would think this takes a lot of time. It really doesn't. Once you have your methods in place, I maybe spend, gosh, during a regular time, maybe 30 minutes a week keeping up with my records. Now, during tax season and stuff like that, I may spend a little bit more time if I'm doing like a yearly review. But as far as on a week by week basis, I'd say 30 minutes tops. So don't think that you're going to have to just spend hours and hours to get all this right. The initial setup may be a little painful and take some time, but once you've got that template in place, then it's just kind of like a plug and play, and it makes it a lot easier. Something else, make sure to don't go it alone. You have us here at the Center of Farm Management. You also have CPA that can help as well. But part of what we do is help people create a record keeping system and then help them stay on track with it. So don't feel like you have to figure it all out on your own. A lot of what I do is set up record keeping templates for people. Make sure, and I always have this in everything, but make sure you've got a good tax preparer that can help you at the end of the season, help you know what to keep up with. We utilize Farm Bureau tax preparers, and we are actually not Farm Bureau members. We just pay, I think it's like a $30 fee, and then we can use their tax preparer services, which is really, really awesome because they focus on farms specifically. And it is much, much cheaper than going to like H&R Block or some of those other places. So again, make sure you've got that good tax preparer that can help you know what you need to keep up with, especially if you're involved in sales tax and all of those things. So something else, on top of creating a schedule, make sure you set a time to review the data you've collected. So not only are you putting it in your record keeping system, you then need to take time to actually sit down and understand that data that you're looking at and what is it telling you. Are there any production practices you may need to change? Maybe you saw a little bit more of disease or pests than you would like to see. Do you need to change your planting schedule or harvesting times based on how things went this past year? Do you maybe need to quit growing certain things? Maybe they're just not selling, and maybe expand on others and focus your attention there. Do you maybe need to adjust your pricing? Are you too low or are you too high? Do you need to focus on less markets or more farmers markets? So again, the data is great having, but if you don't set times to actually sit down and review that data, it's not going to be able to help you. So for this, it kind of depends on what you're growing. If you're doing vegetables, those things have a pretty quick turnaround, as in you can change things fairly quickly. So I would maybe review, set time to review this data maybe once a month or once every 2 months during growing season. For those that are more in long-term things, maybe you only harvest once a year, like row crops or something like that, then obviously you would just do a review once or twice a year. So it just kind of depends on what you're working with, short-term crops or long-term crops. So we are almost finished up here. Just keep in mind, production records and financial records, both are equally important. So please keep up with both. And I would even say, and I don't know if I should say this because my job is financial records, but if I had to choose which one to invest more time in, I would almost say production records, because if you're not producing efficiently and if you don't know what varieties are doing good or how to improve certain things, your finances they're not going to be great either. So please, please, please make sure to focus on those production records. That's what's going to make your financial records very, very healthy. Lastly, I do want to show what we do. So again, I am part of what's called the managed team. There is 7 of us across the state. We each cover a certain region. But we help people with record keeping, financial planning, so budgeting, goal setting, cash flow planning, projections. We help with all of those things. Business plan writing, we also help with that. Getting QuickBooks or Quicken set up. I actually just set up multiple Quicken accounts last week, actually. So we don't mind coming out and helping with that. So do make sure, and I've got this map right here, depending on where you are, you do have a representative in your area. We do have a couple of vacancies right now, but we are covering those vacancies. So don't feel like you don't have anyone to reach out to. So where I'm at, I actually cover this green area. So the kind of north central part of the state. We've got a vacancy out in West Tennessee. And then this area to my right is also vacant. So I'm kind of spread out a lot right now. But if you're in any of these areas, please feel free to reach out to me. And I'd be happy to help. But no matter where you are, you do have one of us in your area. All right, so we can open it up for questions, but thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Eryn. There are, I believe someone has their hand raised. Does someone know? allow, Nancy, if you have a question, I'm gonna hit allow to talk and you should be able to ask your question.
No, I
No,
don't.
I don't.
That might have been left over from when I was asking people to raise their hands. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sending out in the chat the evaluation link for today, and if you are um, you're in need of TAEP education credits, you can also scan that QR code right there, and I'll leave that up. Go ahead and. Oh, okay. Real question, will there be a recorded copy? Yes. These are all posted to the center's YouTube channel. Um, Usually we can get those posted within a week or so. Thanks for the patience last week because I was out of town on the West Coast for a conference. So, but I'll send out an email to all of the registrants as soon as it's posted. It's not a private link. Anybody signed up or not signed up can view it. But yes, they will be posted to YouTube. And with Eryn's, like Eryn said, she's going to send her presentation and the link to that spreadsheet. And I will send that out with that notification.
Yes, I'll send you actually right now. I'm going to send you that record keeping booklet.
Perfect. I have not seen that tool. That'll be really useful for me personally
Yeah,
too.
I love it. It's just it's already done in there and it just makes life easier.
We have another question. Do you have any recommendations for classes to learn how to use Excel? Sorry, I got tongue tied.
Um, so I don't have any specific classes, but honestly, if you YouTube beginner Excel classes, and you can do the same thing with Quicken as well or QuickBooks. A lot of it you can find on YouTube. So I would start there before paying for a class. There's a lot of good resources out there.
Well, like YouTube tutorials have taught me everything I know in this life.
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording, but we are gonna sit around and answer everyone's questions if you have them.